Welcome in, whiskey freaks, to the Blind Tasting Podcast, your number one attitudinal bourbon destination. Today on the Blind Tasting Podcast, we take a wild detour from sipping whiskey to solving murders. The John Benet Ramsey murder case. I figure we can get to the bottom of it in, say, 5 minutes or so? Yeah, no. We are not doing that today. But what we are doing is whiskey. Delicious whiskey. Whiskey you've heard of and whiskey you can afford. Today we do a head-to-head between Weller's Special Reserve and its wheated cousin, Maker's Mark 46. Now I gotta admit, I'm doing this for me as much as I'm doing it for you whiskey freaks. I've had these bottles sitting on the shelf for a good while now, and I'm dying to crack them open and pit them against each other for your entertainment. I want to find out, is the price justified for Green Label Weller? Can Maker's 46 at least hold its own against its cousin that's just 68 miles away? Well, I don't know yet, but we're going to figure it out today. Okay, kids, I'm going to mostly just give you some basics about each bourbon, and then we taste head to head. When I taste, I'm not going to know up front which is which. My lovely assistant has already poured these, and I won't know what's what until afterwards. Anyway, Weller's Special Reserve and Maker's Mark 46, they really are cousins. Well, okay, they are sort of. They're both wheaters, which means their mash bill has wheat instead of rye, and that should make for sweeter, gentler tones while tasting. And each of these bourbon whiskeys is approximately the same mash bill and around the same age. Ish. So I figure this is a great way to battle it out with stuff that's really readily available. Okay, so all right, fair point if you say Weller is harder to find, but it's getting easier to find, and the price is not as crazy as it's been for several years now. Now, Buffalo Trace doesn't disclose the exact proportion of their mash bill for Weller Green Label, but we can take a guess at it. And most estimates are that it's mash bill number 1, and it has about 70% corn, 16% wheat, and 14% malted barley. Weller Special Reserve, it comes in at 90 proof, and it's aged for, okay, so it's not age stated, but it's speculated it's 7 years old. So we're going to go with that. And here's a fun fact. Weller Special Reserve is called the original wheated bourbon because William LaRue Weller first used wheat instead of rye in its recipe. It's also known as the poor man's Pappy because it has the same recipe as the super expensive and famous, and also awesome, Pappy Van Winkle. Now, FYI, I picked up this bottle at the distillery at Buffalo Trace back in March, and I paid 30 doll hairs for it. Obviously, it costs more than that at your neighborhood liquor store. I mean, I've seen it for as low as 35, seen it as high as 80. But every time we roll into Kentucky to visit the in-laws, I've kind of got one mission. Hit up the Buffalo Trace distillery. Now, I'm not saying it's the highlight of the trip, but okay, yeah, it's the highlight of the trip. Last time I walk in, $30 for a bottle of Weller Special Reserve. The shelves are practically groaning under the weight of all the Weller. Pretty amazing. Not bragging. Maybe a little flex. But hey, that's just how it went down. Weller Special Reserve is what you would call the entry-level Weller. They also produce Weller 12-year, Weller Antique 107, and the ridiculous, just absolutely stupid Weller Millennium. Don't get me started. As far as Maker's Mark 46, well, Maker's is located in Loretto, Kentucky, about 68 miles as the crow flies from Frankfort, Kentucky, where Buffalo Trace Distillery sits. Maker's 46 mash bill is pretty much the same as Weller at 70 corn, 16 soft red winter wheat, and 14% malted barley. So we're really, again, what I'm trying to do today is compare apples to apples. Now, it comes in at 94 proof, and that's slightly higher than its cousin, and it's aged for right at 6 years-ish. Now, there's no official age statement, but rumor has it, they age it for right around 6 years, and maybe a little bit more. The shtick, or maybe it's not a shtick, I don't really know if it's a shtick, maybe it's more of a policy or a practice. At Maker's Mark, they don't age to years, rather they say they age to a taste level. Okay, fair enough. So what is so special about Maker's 46? Well, Maker's 46 begins as regular Maker's Mark. It's made in small batches of under 1,000 gallons, and after the bourbon is aged, seared French oak staves are added to the empty barrels. I think they add 10 staves. The barrels are then refilled, and they're placed back in the warehouse to age for about 2 to 3 more months. Again, part of that is speculation, but I think the 2 to 3 months thing is probably pretty darn accurate. Oh yeah, I probably should explain why it's called Maker's 46. At first I thought, well, that's the ABV, but no, that's actually 47 because it's 94 proof. So what could it be? Well, here's the little story about why it's called Maker's 46. Maker's 46 gets its name from the recipe they used to create it. So back when the distillery experimented with adding those French oak staves to enhance the flavor, it took till their 46th attempt to achieve the results that they wanted, to get the flavor profile they wanted. So the 46 is just simply the recipe number. It's just as simple as that. So there you go. So how much did I pay for the Maker's 46? Yeah, I picked this one up at Sam's Club. I think it was right at $30 as well. So again, we're doing even Steven on price points here today as well. Let's get ready to sample. Here we go, kids. I've got 2 samples in front of me, each a number, either 1 on my left or 2 on my right. And like I said before, I don't know which is which, so I'll be revealing each one of those after the initial tasting to find out which wheated cousin will reign supreme today. And guess what? I'm turning off the lights. I obviously can't taste in the complete pitch dark, but I wanted to take away the visual at least, the ability to really get a look at the color. I try very hard not to prejudge anything when I'm tasting, but I mean, after all, we're all human. Well, most of us anyway. And the bias I might get off the colors of the bourbons, I suppose, could impact my tasting experience and maybe even the results today. So, no, that's maybe. So I'm going to take that variable out of the equation. So let me cut off the lights. All right. As you know, I believe the color of the whiskey can often tell you a lot about it. The darker the hue, in many cases, the more depth of flavors you're going to get in your mouth. Either way, I've killed the lights. We're going full mystery mode here. So I lied. I do have some light coming in the back window from the porch light, but that's all I got. I can't tell what the colors of these samples are. I swear on my Bourbon Trail passport. So I'm going to start with number 1 to my left. I'm going to swirl it around a bit. I'm going to start, instead of color, with the nose. It's very bready. Like actual fresh baked bread, maybe that grandma would make. Like a delicious wheat bread. Yummy toasted grains. And I'm getting a sweetness of like caramelized sugar, maybe a brown sugar actually. And super strong caramel and toffee notes too. There's almost 0 ethanol here on the nose, which is fantastic. And I'm also getting something I can't quite put my finger on. Maybe a tinge of cinnamon? Yeah, I think it's cinnamon. So far, so good. I'm getting lots of the things that you're going to like about a bourbon. Sample 1 is right off the bat pretty fantastic. Now I'm going to get a sip of it and do that famous Kentucky chew. Okay. So I'm getting a wonderful, buttery, bready mouthfeel of flavors. That toffee or maybe caramel I was getting on the nose, it's kind of morphed together into a nice butterscotch. But there's lots of oak here. It's very strong, very strong. I guess that's probably due to the finishing with those French oak staves. A lot of oak going on here. Let me get another sip. Okay, so that oak and cinnamon have also emerged here. They've really kind of taken control. It's in a very strong way. But there's a lot going on here. I do like this. Let me get one more sip. So much cinnamon, so much oaky spice. Maybe a little bit of leather joining in the party now. It's, like I said, there's so many flavors that they're just hitting me all at once here. One more little sip. Just for good measure. Okay, I think I've scrutinized sample one as much as possible in the short time that we have today on the podcast. So I'm going to choose number 2 now. Let me clear the palate. And I'm going to see what's what. Like I said, it's dark in here, so there's no color to talk about. I'm going to rely on the other senses, and I'm going to start with the nose. Wow, this is nice. Absolutely zero ethanol. But what I am getting is gentle notes of caramel and vanilla. And let me swirl it a bit in the glass. Okay. I'm getting a fruity note. Maybe apple. And just a hint, maybe just a smidge of oak, but very, very light. Okay, it's pretty clear to me already which one this is, but I'm going to taste it to make sure. Okay, so yeah, very sweet. Now, if you don't like super sweet, you might want to avoid this one. That caramel and vanilla are here, and the slightest amount of fruitiness, really well balanced, really nice. Let me get another sip. I'm getting a lot of spicy heat now. It's lingering for a good while. And that's unusual really for a 90 proofer, but I don't mean it in a bad way. It lingers enough to let you know you're enjoying an adult beverage here. It's a nice little warmth in the throat and chest. And the oak. It was light on the nose. It's a bit stronger here on the finish. Let me take one more sip. I'm enjoying this quite a bit. Alrighty. So the caramel and the vanilla lingers for a good while on the finish, which is nice. I'm getting a bit of orange or citrusy zest, and that sits real nicely on the back end. Nice little tinge of cinnamon spice rounds out the sip. Very well balanced. I really like this. Well, now it's time for the big reveal. And I'll reveal it right after the money spot. Are you looking to update your bar or man cave with some great photographs or wall art? Maybe you have someone special who's into prohibition or whiskey stuff. Head over to Etsy at famousdocs.etsy.com and pick up some fantastic prohibition, whiskey, and gangster-related photographs and wall art. And if you purchase 4 or more items, you'll get 20% off your entire order for a limited time. That's famousdocs.etsy.com. famousdocs.etsy.com. And that web address will be in the show notes. So now it's time for the big reveal. I'm going to take a peek under the glasses. Number 1 is, as I suspected, Maker's Mark. So that means number 2 is Weller Special Reserve. So you're probably wondering, what's the verdict? We got to get a verdict today, right? Well, yeah, duh. And if you've been listening to the Blind Tasting Podcast, you know there are 3 verdict options. Are we going to keep it, collect it, or cull it? To keep it means to proudly display it in your liquor cabinet or bar. This stuff is good anytime, but there's really no need to stock up on it because it's always available. Collect it. Grab another bottle or maybe 2 since you find it so darn delicious, or it just may not be easy to obtain. And the last option is cull it. Use it to loosen rusty bolts or sanitize a dirty toilet. In the case of Maker's 46, I say, keep it. I gotta admit, I loved everything about it until my 3rd sip, and that super strong oakiness, I guess that's by design, was kind of overpowering to me. Now that's just me. I guess the good folks at Maker's Mark tried 46 times to get it right. They think it's awesome, and I think it's pretty good. But if I was doing it, pretending to be a master distiller, I would I wouldn't use as many barrel staves of French oak for the finishing process myself. And that's just how I would do it. I think less oak would equal an amazing bourbon. And it really makes me think of Maker's Cask Strength. I've reviewed it before here on the pod, and at around 112 or 113 proof, and it's not finished in the French oak barrel staves, I think it's the bomb. That's not this. 46 to me, it's kind of disappointing because I know what the really good cask strength stuff tastes like. And the cask strength, boy, that's hard to say, cask strength, is only about $5 more, and you can find it virtually anywhere. In fact, let me grab it and let me see if I still feel the same way about it. Let me cut the lights back on so I don't kill myself, and let me go to my stash. I'll be right back. Okay, I've got the Maker's Cask Strength. I am going to pour just a little bit here, and I'm going to see what I think. See if memory serves. Okay. Yeah, this stuff is candy. Maker's Cask Strength. Gotta love it. It's so good. Again, it's got that higher proof point. It's going to hit you a little bit. Sometimes you might, I don't, because I'm not a wuss, but some people might want to put a few ice chips in there. Just kidding. Or maybe an ice ball, something like that, maybe a couple drops of water. I like drinking it neat. That's just me. But yeah, Maker's Cask Strength, still the bomb. Maker's 46, good, not the bomb. So I say for around the $30 that Maker's 46 runs, you should grab a bottle, and I think you should give it a try. If you're out in a bar, if you're a favorite bourbon club or whatever, maybe get a pour of 46. It's only $30. You're probably going to be able to like it enough to keep it around. You may be able to bum it off a buddy or something, but I would say try it, especially if you're a tree hugger. For me, it's just too much wood. Now, in the case of Weller Special Reserve, I say also keep it. If you can find it for $50 or less, I would definitely grab it. I know some folks are yelling, no way, I'm not supporting those clowns at Buffalo Trace, those jokers. They just gin up demand and all that allocated stuff is ridiculous. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I get it. But this stuff is so nice. When I was nosing it, the word that came to my mind, and I didn't say it out loud, was sunshine. Well, okay, it was, to me. It just puts a smile on my face. Now, is it a symphony in your mouth? No, it's not a symphony in your mouth. But for $30, it's at least a pretty talented bluegrass band with a banjo and a fiddle. It's terrific stuff, guys. Now, I've heard Weller Green Label. I've heard it described as delicate or unoffensive, things like that. And I've also heard it described sometimes as generic bourbon whiskey. Okay, well, while it might be generic, and to me that means it's really something everyone can enjoy, whether you're a newbie, whether you're a veteran bourbon drinker, I think it deserves high marks. I mean, think about it. How many other things in life are middle of the road or generic, and yet they get huge audiences and a gigantic fan base? Think Taylor Swift, for example. Or what about vanilla ice cream? Or what about black coffee? Millions and millions of folks enjoy these otherwise generic things. So why can't Weller be generic and awesome at the same time? Well, I say it can. So who's the ultimate winner today? Well, it pains me to say it because I hate when you spend your afternoon watching a soccer match or a football game and the damn game just ends in a tie. That just burns me up. And to me, there should always be a winner, at least in my mind. But here we are with Maker's 46 and Weller Special Reserve. And I think the winner is going to actually be all you whiskey freaks. For these price tags, you just can't go wrong with either of these bourbons. Okay, All right, if you're going to force me, and I had to pick, I'd give the slightest advantage to Weller Special Reserve. I'm not a tater or a bourbon idiot. I just love the approachableness. Is that a word? It's approachable. How about that? It's approachable in a way that we can all appreciate. So, there it is, kids. Weller Special Reserve by a hair. Last but not least, let's give a shout out to all the farmers, distillery production guys and gals, warehouse workers, the bottlers, the truck drivers. They're the ones that make it happen. So cheers to all of them. Well, that's all I got for today, Whiskey Freaks. Thanks for listening to the Blind Tasting Podcast.